You are sleeping with your eyes open. You walk the streets believing you are victims of mysterious forces, that luck decides who prospers and who fails. But I tell you, nothing, absolutely nothing happens outside of what has already been silently decreed within you. What you call destiny is neither luck nor punishment. It is merely the echo of what you dared or feared to accept as truth. The world you perceive is not solid. It is not fixed. It is an obedient shadow. It is a reflection. And a reflection never has a life of its own. It only responds to the form that projects it. You chase after external signs, plead for proof, beg for change like someone imploring for alms. But understand this: as long as you wait for the external to change first, you will remain trapped in the same cycle of repetition. Reality does not bend to the cry of the weak, but to the certainty of those who assume. It is not the eyes that confirm the truth. It is imagination, sustained with discipline. And here is the mystery few understand. There are words that, when used carelessly, seal your prison. You say, "I am," in a tone of defeat, in a tone of doubt, and you don't realize you are signing a sentence against yourselves. The universe does not argue with the conviction you affirm. It merely obeys. The divine frequency is not activated by lament, but by the boldness of living internally, as if it were already reality. Therefore, listen seriously, because what I reveal to you is not advice, it is law. It is not an opinion, but an eternal principle that governs kings and beggars, saints and sinners. The external world is a slave to the internal state. Whoever understands this awakens. Whoever rejects it will continue to wander, blaming chance for what they themselves silently decreed. The first principle is this: do not trust your eyes, for they are liars. The senses scream like false witnesses, pointing to scarcity, to illness, to rejection, and you believe them as if they were infallible judges. But what is visible is not the cause. It is merely the consequence. You can look at a tree full of fruit, but if you do not know the root, you do not understand where its strength came from. So it is with life. The circumstances you see are fruits, but the root lies in what you have silently accepted as truth. When you allow yourselves to be deceived by appearances, you become slaves to the reflection. But when you dare to deny the senses and maintain the inner vision, you assume the place of masters. Imagine a man who sees only an empty bank account. He despairs, tells himself, "I am poor, there's no way out." The world then returns to him exactly that sentence, multiplying signs of lack. Now imagine another who looks at the same account, but instead of bowing to the number, closes his eyes and affirms with conviction, "My wealth is already present. I already dwell in abundance." What will happen? The world, obedient as a servant, will move circumstances, people, and opportunities to confirm the inner state. It doesn't matter if it takes days or months. The law does not fail. The invisible always precedes the visible. When the scriptures say, "We walk by faith, not by sight," they speak precisely of this. Sight is deceiving. Faith is inner certainty. Whoever relies on the senses is like one who builds upon sand. The slightest storm brings them down. Whoever relies on the assumed state builds upon rock, because nothing external can undo what has already been sealed within. You must learn to disregard appearances, to laugh at contradictory signs, to deny the tyranny of the present. For the present, you see, is merely a shadow of an inner yesterday. Train yourselves for this discipline. When the body screams pain, do not accept it as a sentence, but as an echo. When your pocket cries scarcity, do not venerate it as a god, but as a fleeting reflection. When life presents rejection, do not assume it as identity, but as dust that the wind soon carries away. The secret lies in remaining firm in the inner vision, like one who knows the true cause has already been planted. Imagine yourselves as gardeners. If the seed has been sown in the soil, you do not tear up the earth every day to check. You water, you wait, and you trust. So it is with inner states. Plant conviction, water with discipline, and wait with serenity. The fruit is inevitable. Therefore, the first principle demands courage. The courage to close your eyes to the world and open the eyes of imagination. You need to learn to say within yourselves, "It doesn't matter what I see. What matters is what I assume." This is the key that separates those who create purposefully from those who live as victims. And then arises the second principle, as misunderstood as it is powerful. Understand that every word you utter is a seed sown in the fertile field of the mind, and none of them returns empty. Every word that comes from your mouth is a decree. There is no neutral word, no innocent thought. You have become accustomed to speaking just to speak, to repeating phrases of defeat like someone singing without thinking about the lyrics. But the universe does not distinguish between play and seriousness. It records, accepts, and returns exactly what you affirm. When you say, "I can't," you seal your incapacity. When you murmur, "Everything goes wrong for me," you sign your own sentence of failure. Words are invisible seeds, and the mind is soil that never refuses to germinate. Realize the danger in this. Many of you daily repeat phrases that sustain the prison in which you live. Look around. How often do you hear people saying the world is cruel, that life is hard, that they weren't born to win? What happens afterward? Life confirms it. Not because life is cruel, but because the law is exact. What you plant, you harvest. The problem is not the world. The problem is the negligence of the power of the word. When the scriptures say, "In the beginning was the Word," they are not speaking of poetry, but of law. The Word creates. The Word is a creative seed. And if in the beginning it shaped heavens and earth, today within you it shapes destinies, relationships, health, wealth, or ruin. You can transform your mouths into a source of life or a source of destruction. You can seal miracles or seal prisons. Blame no one else. Every phrase you accept is a brick in the construction of your reality. And here is the calling. Guard your words as one guards treasures. Before speaking, ask yourselves, am I sowing what I wish to reap or what I fear to reap? If the answer is fear, silence is better. But if it is certainty, speak with authority. It is not about repeating empty formulas, but about assuming with conviction the word that already carries the life you want to live. When someone asks, "How are you?" and your body aches, resist the temptation to seal, "I am bad." Respond from within, not from the reflection, because every response is a brick, and sooner or later the house will rise. Remember this, the word does not act alone, it acts because it is pronounced with feeling. What you say with emotion is what is engraved most deeply. A complaint filled with anger manifests quickly. Gratitude pronounced with faith does too. Have you ever noticed how a curse spoken with conviction can traverse generations? Likewise, a blessing, when cast with certainty, can open doors that nothing external could open. Make no mistake, the external world does not choose for you. You choose every day by what you affirm, by what you repeat, by what you sustain in your heart. Guard your tongue like a sword, for from it can come both wound and healing. To live as if it already is. This is the third principle, and few have the courage to practice it. Most prefer to wait for money to arrive before feeling prosperous, to wait for the body to heal before feeling healthy, to wait for someone to love them before believing they are worthy of love. But this waiting is the soul's greatest poison, because one who waits declares in silence, "I don't have, I am not, it hasn't arrived yet." And the universe, obedient, confirms exactly that lack. You need to understand that the secret is not in reacting to what already exists, but in inhabiting the state before it manifests. It's like an actor who embodies a character. He doesn't ask if he already is, he simply assumes and lives it. The body adjusts, the mind adapts, and for a time, the character becomes so real that even the audience forgets it's acting. Such must be your attitude towards life. It doesn't matter if external reality screams scarcity, if the body cries pain, if relationships seem empty. You must inhabit the desired state, like one who wears an invisible garment, and sustains it until the world has no choice but to reflect it. Remember what is written. When you pray, believe that you have already received, and it will be yours. It does not say, believe that you will receive someday, but you have already received. The Creator's time is not future, it is present. If you want abundance, walk with the mind of one who already possesses it. If you want healing, carry within you the posture of one who is already restored. If you want love, live with the confidence of one who is already loved. The law does not distinguish between what exists in the invisible and the visible. For it, the assumed state is already reality. Of course, the natural mind resists. It whispers, "You are pretending, you are deceiving yourself." But understand, it's not about deceiving, but about commanding. The external world is a servant, not a master. You are not lying to yourselves. You are instructing reality about who you are. And this instruction must be firm, constant, unwavering. Imagine a farmer who sows wheat. He doesn't wait to see the grains sprout the next day to believe the harvest will come. He acts as if it's already certain, because he knows the earth never fails to return what it receives. So too with you. Act, speak, breathe, as if you are already living what you desire. Faith is the invisible seal that hastens the process. This principle is the watershed between those who merely dream and those who manifest. To dream is to wait. To manifest is to assume. And he who assumes sooner or later will see the invisible become visible, because the law knows no other response than obedience. The fourth principle is this: learn to read life as a great symbolic book. Nothing that happens before you is random. Every encounter, every word, every delay, every lost or gained opportunity is a reflection of what you have been silently sustaining within yourselves. But because you are asleep, you treat the signs as coincidences. There is no such thing as chance. Life is a faithful mirror of the state you inhabit. When you live in a constant feeling of rejection, notice how the world immediately plays that role. People distance themselves, doors close, opportunities slip away, and you say, "See, nobody values me." But you don't realize that the world merely obeyed the inner decree. On the other hand, when someone internally assumes they are worthy, loved, respected, the entire universe begins to conspire to confirm that state. Small gestures, glances, invitations, even strangers seem to recognize this new identity, as if there were a secret language operating behind appearances. The scriptures are full of symbols that speak of this law. Think of stories that seem like simple narratives, but which, in truth, are mirrors of inner states. The sea that parts is not just a historical fact. It is the image of resistance yielding before sustained conviction. The Promised Land is not a geographical territory, but the state of abundance already inhabited by faith. Everything you read outside is a reflection of what already exists within. You need to learn to interpret life this way, like one who deciphers signs. A stumble can be proof that you still carry haste or anxiety within you. An unexpected compliment can be confirmation that you have begun to inhabit a state of worth. A repeated obstacle can be a revelation that you still hold onto old beliefs. Nothing is trivial. Everything is a message. He who reads symbolically ceases to be a victim and becomes a student. He understands that life is merely reflecting his own inner posture. And when he sees a reflection he doesn't desire, he doesn't fight the mirror, he doesn't despair against the reflection, he changes the original image. This is the key. Change the inside to transform the outside. You have been trained to give more importance to external signs than to inner vision, but the true master looks at the world as at a dream. He knows that everything there is a projection. If the dream is dark, he doesn't blame the characters. He changes the consciousness that produces it. So it is with wakefulness. If life shows you scarcity, do not fight against it with despair. Assume within yourselves the state of abundance, and you will see the scenery change. This principle demands silence and observation. It requires you to stop reacting automatically and start seeing with eyes of interpretation. He who reads life symbolically awakens, because he understands that nothing is an enemy. Everything is a mirror. The fifth principle is the discipline of sustaining the chosen state, even when everything around seems to scream the opposite. This is where most fail because they give up too soon. You assume a vision for a few moments, feel the desired reality for a few minutes, but soon yield to the tyranny of the senses. The slightest contradictory sign is enough, and you return to affirming the old identity, like one who pulls a seed from the earth because they do not yet see the plant sprout. And then you complain, "The law doesn't work." No, the law did not fail. You simply lacked the courage to persist. The world is persistent in testing the firmness of what you declare. It places before you the same circumstances, the same obstacles, not to punish you, but to silently ask, have you truly chosen this new state, or do you still belong to the old one? And many, faced with the first contradiction, abandon their new position. But the Master does not bend. The Master persists. The Master understands that the invisible always precedes the visible, and that the harvest is inevitable when the seed is watered with constancy. Remember, discipline is not just effort, it is sustained faith. It is refusing to return to the old self, even if the whole world seems to mock your conviction. It is acting like the farmer who knows, if I planted, it is done. He does not dig up the earth every day to check. He waters, waits, and trusts. So too with you. If you have assumed health, remain in that state even if the body aches. If you have assumed abundance, remain firm, even when finances are tight. If you have assumed love, sustain it, even in the face of momentary rejection. Persist until the world, tired of resisting, bows before the certainty you carry. Discipline is the shield against illusions. It is proof that you truly know who you are. Because anyone can imagine for a few minutes, but only those who persist shape destinies. You need to develop this inner fortitude, this firmness that is not shaken by contradictory signs. External reality is slow at times, but it always obeys. Always. Now I tell you, abandon the posture of beggars. Stop supplicating for external changes. Stop chasing after proofs. Assume, sustain, and command in silence. You are not at the mercy of chance. You are the invisible decree makers who move the scenery. Discipline is the sword that cuts doubt. It is the seal that compels the world to bow. And when you truly sustain the chosen state, nothing and no one can prevent its manifestation. You have come this far, heard each principle, and now you need to understand the seriousness of what has been revealed. Nothing in life is loose, nothing happens by chance. Everything you now call reality is merely the faithful reflection of what you have already accepted and silently sustained within yourselves. It is like a mirror. It does not create its own image. It only returns what is projected onto it. Many of you spend your lives fighting with the reflection, trying to forcibly change the external, without realizing that the true key has always been within. If you want to transform what you see, you need to change what you carry inside. This is the eternal law, and there is no exception. Look back and realize, every victory you achieved was first born as a silent certainty, even if for moments. Every defeat you experienced was also confirmed by an inner acceptance. You can deny it, you can blame circumstances, people, or even destiny, but that doesn't change the truth. Life only returns to you what you sustain as a state, and until you assume this responsibility, you will continue to repeat the same cycles, like prisoners walking in circles within their own cell, believing the bars are outside, when in fact they are within. Therefore, I tell you, stop begging, stop dragging yourselves through life as if you were powerless victims. Every time you wait for the world to change first, you confess that you do not believe in the power you carry, and this confession becomes a sentence. As you implore, wait, doubt, the universe merely responds, as you believe, so it shall be. Do you not realize you are creating the very prison you complain about? It is time to awaken from this illusion. You were not created to crawl, but to command. I speak not of arrogance, but of inheritance. The inheritance of a creator who has forgotten who they are and lives as a servant to circumstances that have no life of their own. I tell you firmly, nothing that happens externally is your master. Sickness is not a master, scarcity is not a master, loneliness is not a master. All these things are merely echoes, shadows that bow before the authority of one who dares to assume the opposite state. But for this to happen, discipline is required. Discipline not to bow to the senses. Discipline not to return to the old self. Discipline to hold the torch alight in the midst of the storm. You need to choose, and choose now. Either you continue as beggars, supplicating the reflection to return a different image to you, or you assume your position as conscious creators, silently and with certainty decreeing what you wish to see manifested. The law does not fail, but it demands courage. Courage to live as if it already is, even when everything seems to deny it. Courage to sustain the word of blessing, even when your lips want to utter complaints. Courage to interpret life as a symbol and not as a final sentence. And I tell you, if you dare to assume this path, you will see the impossible bend before you. Reality will move like an obedient servant, because it has no choice. It does not create, it merely responds. You are the cause, always have been, always will be. The only question is, what state are you choosing to sustain? There is no more time for postponements. Today is the day you stop begging and start commanding. Today is the day you stop chasing after signs and become the sign. Today is the day you remember that everything already is, and it is within. Assume with firmness, sustain with discipline, and prepare yourselves. The world will inevitably bow to the state you decree in silence and certainty. Listen to me earnestly, for I speak to you not as a curious audience, but as children who have forgotten their own origin. You walk through the world believing that facts, circumstances, and people have power over your destiny. But I say with conviction, nothing you see out there has independent authority. Everything, absolutely everything, is a reflection of what has been silently accepted and sustained within you. The world is not a judge, it is a mirror, and every image reflected in it was born from what you dared to declare, even without words when you identified with an inner state. When I speak to you of the expression I am not referring to a simple combination of words, but to the name that carries the essence of all creative power. This I am is the root of every experience, the invisible foundation upon which all reality is built. What you unite with this affirmation becomes a seed, and every seed bears fruit according to its kind. If you say in thought, I am weak, no matter how much you struggle externally, you will reap weakness. If you assume I am abundant, no matter how loudly external appearances scream scarcity, sooner or later abundance will emerge as an inevitable response. Understand, it is not the winds of the world that guide life's boat, but the silent rudder you hold within your mind. The error of most is to beg for external signs before assuming the inner truth. But this is the root of slavery, waiting to see in order to believe. The law demands that you believe before you see. It demands that you wear the desired state as if it were already present, even when all evidence points otherwise. For the invisible precedes the visible, the inner governs the outer, and the I am is the decree that the universe never dares to disobey. Thus, when I state that certain words carry a miraculous vibration, I am not saying that the change lies in their sound, but in the spirit with which they are spoken. I am is the divine breath within you. It is the eternal spark that creates worlds. When you pronounce it with conviction, you unite with the source that denies nothing. When you declare it in doubt, you make that very source a servant of your uncertainties. Therefore, awaken. The power is not in asking, but in assuming. Not in pleading, but in declaring. Not in waiting, but in living now as if it already were. Have you noticed how most people live as slaves to external signs? They believe they need to see a change on the outside to then believe something has changed within them. But this is the greatest deception. The visible always comes later. It is merely a consequence. The invisible, that which is silently assumed and sustained in the heart, is the true cause. The law is immutable. First the state, then the fact. He who waits for a sign to believe is never freed, for he remains imprisoned by doubt. But he who assumes before seeing, even in the midst of a desert, is the only one who truly creates. Observe your own life. When you felt accepted and loved, even without words, didn't that shape how others treated you? When, in silence, you decided something was possible, didn't you notice that circumstances somehow aligned in favor of that decision? This is not coincidence. It is the law in action. The world is not cause, it is effect. It is like a shadow that merely follows the projected form. Therefore, if you want to transform your reality, do not seek to change the shadow. Change the form within yourself. You can look at an empty wallet and declare, I am prosperous. You can look at sickness and declare, I am healthy. You can see yourselves alone and nevertheless maintain, I am loved. By doing this, you are not escaping reality, but creating the only true reality, the one that precedes the facts. This is how the invisible becomes more real than the visible. He who understands this principle does not despair in the face of appearances, because he knows they are merely echoes of a previous state. The scriptures are full of this truth. Abraham was called the father of many nations when he had no son yet. David was anointed king while still tending sheep. The Christ declared, "I am the resurrection and the life," in the face of death. The pattern is always the same. Assume before seeing, declare before possessing, live internally, that which still has no external form. This is the secret that distinguishes those who command life from those who are dragged along by it. But discipline is required. The undisciplined mind chases after signs, like a beggar waiting for alms. It prays for external proof, and upon not receiving it, returns to despair. This is living backward. Discipline is to silence the voices of fear and sustain the chosen state as if it were already reality. It is to repeat in silence, "I am," and unite to it only what you wish to manifest. This is the creative act, the decree that no force in the world can revoke. Imagine someone who desires abundance, but all circumstances scream scarcity. If that person yields to appearances, they will live enslaved by them. But if, in their quietude, they assume the state of abundance and wear it like an invisible cloak, the world will inevitably begin to reorganize itself to confirm what they had already declared within. The path may be unexpected, but the law does not fail. It is impossible to assume a state and not reap its fruits. Therefore, wait no longer. Stop looking outward as if signs had the power to authorize your faith. They do not. The power is in assuming now, in this instant, what you wish to be. Life will respond to this decision as it always responds, with facts that bow to the sustained state. Believe before you see, for this is the only path to create. When you understand that feeling is the language of creation, you begin to realize that it is not mechanically spoken words that transform life, but what they carry behind them. The universe does not respond to empty sounds. It responds to the vibration emanating from the heart. That is why so many people declare, "I am prosperous," and remain in poverty, or say, "I am loved," and stay solitary. It is not the phrase itself that moves mountains, but the intensity of the feeling that accompanies it. What you truly accept as who you are, that becomes inevitable. Imagine someone who repeats every day, "I am strong." If inwardly they see themselves as weak, defeated, incapable, their declaration is like a shadow without a body. But when feeling unites with the word, when the heart vibrates in harmony with the declared state, the external world has no choice but to reflect this new condition. The law knows no contradiction. It always manifests what you feel to be true about yourselves. You can observe this principle in small things. When you wake up in the morning already feeling heavy, irritated, it's as if the whole day conspires to confirm that state. And when you rise with a feeling of victory, of confidence, even without apparent reason, events seem to open doors where there were once walls. This is not coincidence, it is a response. Life echoes what you feel to be true. The scriptures reinforce this mystery. When Christ said, "If you believe with all your heart," he was not pointing to an intellectual faith, but to a felt conviction, a certainty that vibrates in every cell of your being. The heart, in biblical language, is the center of feeling. What you harbor there will become flesh, will become experience. Therefore, to protect the heart is to protect life itself, for from it spring the sources of existence. If you desire transformation, you need to learn to inhabit the desired state with feeling. It's not enough to imagine wealth as a distant picture. You must feel rich already, walk as one who already possesses, act as one who already is. This feeling is the seal of creation, the invisible mark that summons facts to reorganize themselves. If you desire healing, don't just ask for health. Feel the vigor coursing through your body. See yourselves free. Breathe as one who already enjoys fullness. This sensation, even if invisible to others' eyes, is already the vibration that summons the corresponding reality. But here is the challenge. Many allow themselves to be deceived by appearances and let their feelings be shaped by the external world. They see lack and feel lack, see pain and feel pain, see rejection and feel rejection. Thus they reinforce the cycle and perpetuate the undesired state. The key is to reverse this movement. First, feel what you desire, even if there is no external sign yet, and then let the world follow. Therefore, hold this principle well. Life does not return to you what you say, but what you feel to be true about yourselves. If you want to change the world, first change the vibration of your heart. Put feeling into I am. Wear it as an already present reality, and you will see the entire universe conspire to confirm what you have silently sustained. The human mind is a fertile field, but many waste this sacred ground by cultivating states they do not wish to perpetuate within it. It is easy to be dragged by fear, doubt, the silent complaint that things are not as we would like them to be. However, each time you allow yourselves to inhabit these states, even in thought, you are giving them the right to become flesh. The I am is neutral. It does not distinguish between what you want or don't want. It merely confirms. Therefore, every time you affirm inwardly, I am anxious, I am unhappy, I am a failure, even in silence, life responds like an obedient servant, bringing experiences that confirm this decree. It is necessary to learn to firmly refuse undesired states. Just as someone rejects a garment that does not fit them, you need to abandon without hesitation every thought or feeling that is not aligned with what you wish to experience. This is not an escape from reality, it is an act of sovereignty. It is declaring that you will no longer surrender the power of creation to appearances or external suggestions. When a thought of doubt arises, do not engage with it, for every dialogue feeds the state. Let it pass like smoke in the wind and return to the chosen state. Life gives you daily invitations to inhabit lower states. A word of contempt, a financial difficulty, negative news, all of this knocks at the door of your mind, trying to make you wear the garb of limitation. But remember, no one can force you to accept. The decision is always internal. You can see the storm and even so remain in peace. You can hear an offense and yet remember who you are. You can face lack and stand firm in the invisible abundance that already belongs to you. This is true discipline, not allowing your imagination to be kidnapped by appearances. It is to sustain the desired vision when everything seems to scream the opposite. It is to say in silence, I am, and unite to this affirmation only the state you wish to perpetuate. And here is the secret. The more quickly you abandon an undesired state and return to the chosen state, the faster the visible transformation becomes. It is not about never feeling fear or doubt, but about not remaining in them, not allowing them to take root. Scripture echoes this truth when it says, "Put on the new man." This garment is not physical but internal. It is consciously choosing which state to carry, which identity to sustain. If you clothe yourselves in victory, even amidst defeat, sooner or later victory will manifest. If you clothe yourselves in love, even when surrounded by rejection, you will attract experiences of affection. The I am is the invisible clothing everyone wears, and the world merely reacts to it. Therefore, stop clinging to states that only enslave you. Do not linger in doubt. Do not feed on complaint. Do not converse with fear. Every moment you sustain these states is a seed planted. Choose with discipline the state you wish to perpetuate. Make this a daily exercise. Whenever you notice your mind being dragged away, recall what you already are. This silent act, repeated with constancy, is what separates those who live as victims from those who awaken as creators. The invisible is more real than the visible, and this is a truth few dare to accept. The common error is to believe that only what the eyes can see is real, but the eyes merely capture effects, never causes. What you call material reality is the delayed reflection of what has already been accepted in the invisible. The seed, before breaking through the earth, already contained within itself the promise of the harvest. Likewise, the imagined scene, sustained with feeling, already contains within itself the germ of inevitable manifestation. The trained mind understands that it should not look to the external world for authorization to believe. On the contrary, it knows that everything that appears is merely the echo of previous states. If today life shows lack, sadness, or illness, this is not a sentence, but merely the harvest of seeds already planted. And just as one cannot expect a seed of thorns to produce sweet fruits, one cannot expect states of fear and doubt to produce abundance and joy. You must plant differently if you want to reap differently. The scriptures affirm, "Call things that are not as if they were already." This is not poetry. It is practical instruction. It is the invitation to inhabit, with conviction, that which still has no visible form. Abraham was called the father of nations even before he had a son. This was the law at work. Assume in the invisible until the visible had no choice but to obey. The Christ multiplied loaves not because he saw abundance on the outside, but because he felt abundance in the invisible and called it forth as if it were already a present reality. You need to learn to live more intensely within the invisible than in what is shown by the senses. Close your eyes to chaos and contemplate order. Be silent in the face of lack and imagine fullness. Feel victory while still on the battlefield. The secret is to remain in this vision until it becomes more familiar than the circumstances themselves. At that point, the external world, which is always a servant, bows and reorganizes itself to give form to what has been accepted internally. Do not confuse this with escaping reality. It is not to deny the facts, but to recognize that they have no definitive power. Facts are merely old photographs of states already abandoned. True power lies in assuming a new identity now, a new vibration, and keeping it alive within yourself. The invisible is like the womb of creation. It is where life germinates before appearing. And those who dare to trust in it walk securely, even when everything around seems to scream the opposite. Therefore, choose to live in the invisible. Choose to inhabit the scenes you wish to experience until they become natural within you. Do not expect the world to deliver proof, for the world is merely an echo. You are the voice that determines what should be repeated. If the invisible is assumed as real, the visible will bow without struggle and without delay, to give form to the inner state you have sustained with conviction. Sovereignty begins in the silence of the mind. Many desire to govern the external world, but remain slaves to what happens within them. They do not realize that every visible disorder is a reflection of inner indiscipline. Whoever allows wandering thoughts, uncontrolled emotions, and constant doubts to dominate their consciousness will sooner or later see this confusion reflected in life's circumstances. Inner discipline is the key that distinguishes the awakened creator from the lost dreamer. An ungoverned mind is like a city without walls, vulnerable to any invader. Every negative word, every piece of fearful news, every comment of defeat enters and settles in, shaping feelings and states that become facts. But when one raises walls of inner discipline, learning to guard one's thoughts and refuse what is not aligned with the desired state, nothing external can penetrate and steal one's peace. This is the true reign, to master oneself before seeking to master circumstances. Scripture echoes this when it says, "Be still and know that I am God." This is not merely a devotional phrase, it is practical instruction. To be still is to cease mental agitation, to silence the noise of fear, haste, the need for proof. To know is to recognize with conviction that the I am within you is the creative presence itself. When these two actions are united, disciplined silence and firm certainty, an authority is born that no external force can resist. You were not called to beg for changes, but to decree. A decree is not a shout, not despair, not a plea. A decree is to assume in silence, I am, and unite to it only what you wish to perpetuate. It is to walk in the world as one who has already received, speak as one who already possesses, act as one who already is. This inner firmness creates a vibration that reorganizes people, circumstances, and events in obedience to the sustained state. But know this discipline requires courage. It is easier to yield to appearances, to cry in the face of scarcity, to complain in the face of pain, to blame someone for frustration. It is difficult to silence the impulse to react and sustain the chosen vision when everything screams the opposite. It is difficult to look at lack and continue to affirm, I am abundance. It is difficult to feel pain and yet firmly declare, I am health. But it is in this difficulty that the true Creator is revealed, one who does not bow to evidence, but makes evidence bow to them. Therefore, understand, inner discipline is outer sovereignty. He who governs the invisible within himself governs the visible outside himself. He who sustains inner order will see order manifest in the world. From now on, do not allow yourselves to live as beggars waiting for the external to change first. Reject this role of victim and assume the throne that has always belonged to you. The I am is the supreme decree, and the world is nothing more than the servant of that decree. Declare with certainty, sustain with discipline, and you will see reality bend before the state you have chosen to inhabit. Now understand, nothing outside of you has the authority to decide who you are or what you will experience. The world is nothing more than an obedient mirror, reflecting the inner state you have chosen to sustain. Therefore, the key is not in asking, pleading, or waiting for signs, but in assuming, in declaring in silence, with unshakable conviction, I am. These words are not simple sounds. They are the vibration of the creative power that dwells within each of you. Enough with begging for external changes. Enough with living as if you were servants of circumstances. You were called to reign, and the throne of that reign is consciousness. Every state you choose to inhabit will inevitably become flesh, and life will bow before what you have decreed within yourselves. Wait no longer for proof. Feed doubt no more. The moment is now. Rise and assume the inheritance that has always belonged to you. Declare in silence but with authority, I am health, I am abundance, I am love, I am victory. Sustain this with firmness and walk as one who already possesses. The universe will have no choice but to obey. Remember, the power is not outside, it never was. It has always been within, waiting for you to recognize it. And when you do, when you live as conscious creators, you discover that everything already is and always has been yours. Man seeks doors to the invisible, but ignores that the greatest of all lies within himself. Since the beginning of time, sages have repeated in different languages and symbols the same truth. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And yet, most live as spiritual beggars, pleading for changes in the external world without ever realizing that the external world is merely a mirror of an internal state. The unconscious is this silent realm, the command center of existence, where every thought clothed in emotion becomes a creative command. Entering it is not a task for a select few enlightened individuals, but the natural right of every human being who awakens to their divine origin. You have been conditioned to believe that what is real is what can be touched, measured, or proven. But this is merely the shadow cast by something far greater. True power lies not in the hands, but in the mind. Not in physical effort, but in consciousness. Every image you hold within yourself is a living seed planted in the soil of the unconscious. And like every seed, it germinates in darkness before appearing in the light. The problem is that modern man fears inner silence, fears the void, and therefore distracts himself with 1,000 external voices, without realizing that by fleeing silence, he flees the very source of power. Entering your unconscious is turning inward until the world disappears. It is disengaging from the appearance of things and contemplating only what you desire as if it already exists. This is not an act of childish imagination, but an act of conscious creation. The unconscious does not distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It reacts only to the vibration of sustained feeling. Therefore, what you feel as true, even if you deny it with words, will become fact. You can say, I am rich, but if deep down you feel fear and scarcity, the unconscious will not hear your words. It will only hear the feeling of lack and reproduce it in the form of circumstances. The world is a collective hypnosis, and awakening means breaking free from it. It's not about fighting against appearances, but understanding that they have no life of their own. Everything that exists on the physical plane is a consequence, not a cause. The causes lie in states of consciousness. If you want to transform your life, don't start by changing the world. Change the state that generates it. The secret is not in doing, but in being. When you internally assume the desired state and feel it as real, the world obediently bows before your new self. This is the law, ancient as time itself. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And this is precisely what most have forgotten, that asking is feeling, that faith is not hope, but inner conviction, that true prayer is not a repetition of words, but the intimate acceptance that the desire has already been fulfilled. Therefore, in this teaching, I do not ask you to believe in something outside of yourself, but to recognize the power that already dwells within your own consciousness. Because when you discover how to enter your unconscious, you also discover that there is no distance between what you imagine and what you live. Everything you see out there is merely the echo of what you decided to feel as true within. The unconscious is the true silent creator of your reality. It does not think, argue, or choose between good and evil. It merely accepts absolutely everything that is felt as true. This is the first great revelation for anyone who wishes to transform their life. The unconscious does not respond to words, but to the emotions that sustain them. You can repeat "I am prosperous" 1,000 times, but if deep down you feel fear, lack, or doubt, the unconscious will register only the feeling and transform it into form. It is like a living mirror that reflects without judgment the emotional content you carry within. Everything you experience in the visible world is, in truth, the faithful reflection of what your consciousness felt as real in the invisible. Therefore, to understand this law is to understand yourself. The unconscious is like a perfect servant, obedient to the master that is feeling. It does not distinguish between what you desire and what you fear. To it, everything intensely felt is a command. If you fear losing something, the unconscious sees this fear as an instruction and creates circumstances that confirm that loss. If you feel rejected, the world around you begins to act in a way that validates this feeling. That is why transformation begins within, because it is impossible to alter effects while maintaining the same cause. The world is the mirror, and you are the image reflected in it. The secret is to feel the desire as already realized. Not as something distant, but as an inner presence so real that no doubt can survive. When you feel something with conviction, this emotion crosses the conscious mind and penetrates the deep layers of the unconscious, where all realities are formed. From that moment, invisible forces begin to move in your favor, arranging encounters, ideas, and events that will make the invisible become visible. You do not need to know how this will happen, because the how belongs to the creative power that acts through you. Your role is merely to feel with firmness and constancy what you desire as being now. Entering the unconscious is an art. It requires silence, imagination, and surrender. You cannot force it, only allow the correct emotion to permeate it. It is in a state of relaxation between sleep and wakefulness that access becomes purest, because at this point the conscious mind weakens and the language of feeling speaks directly to the creative power. Learn then to fall asleep feeling already in possession of what you seek. Feel the relief of one who has already succeeded, the gratitude of one who already lives the result. This emotion is the key that opens the doors to the invisible. The unconscious, true to its role, will transform this feeling into concrete reality. And when the world changes before your eyes, you will understand that nothing came from outside. Everything was the response from within. Because the unconscious always obeys, and what it accepts as true, sooner or later, becomes your life. Imagination is the portal through which the invisible becomes visible. Nothing that exists in the physical world emerged without first having been imagined. Before a house was built, someone envisioned it in thought. Before a melody was played, someone heard it within themselves. Man's error lies in imagining unconsciously, allowing fear, doubt, and despair to paint the picture of his reality. But when imagination is directed with intention and feeling, it becomes the most powerful instrument in the universe. What you imagine with emotion and conviction is what will inevitably become your experience. Most people imagine distractedly, believing that thinking about something is merely daydreaming, but there is a profound difference between fantasizing and consciously creating. To fantasize is to observe a possibility. To create is to live it internally. When you imagine something and feel yourself within the scene, when you touch, hear, and see as if it were real, you shift your consciousness to that state. And consciousness is the only reality. The unconscious does not know that this is just imagination. It accepts the internal experience as fact and begins to reorganize the external world to confirm what you have lived internally. Every manifestation begins with an image sustained in the mind and nourished by the corresponding feeling. The image is the form. The feeling is the life that animates it. That is why many affirm something but see no result, because the image they sustain and the feeling they emit are not in harmony. You can visualize wealth, but if you feel lack, you are creating more absence. You can imagine a perfect relationship, but if you feel loneliness, you are feeding the opposite. Imagination only fulfills its role when it is lived with total surrender, when mind and heart unite in the same vibration of certainty. Therefore, train your imagination as an artist trains their eye. Create within yourself what you wish to see outside. Make this a daily habit. Close your eyes and enter the desired scene until it feels natural, until the world around you seems like an extension of this inner vision. The key is not in force, but in gentleness. The more relaxed you are, the more deeply the image penetrates the unconscious. Effort blocks the flow. Faith releases it. When the image is clear and the feeling true, let go. Let the creative power act on its own. You don't need to push the river, just flow with it. Conscious imagination is the language of God within you, the means by which the invisible speaks to matter. And when you use it wisely, you realize there is no difference between imagining and creating, for imagining is the very act of creation in its purest form. Persistence is the fire that transforms the seed into fruit. Many understand the law, imagine what they desire, but fail because they give up before the creation is complete. The unconscious responds to constancy, not to haste. It needs a sustained vibration, a feeling repeated until it becomes natural. When you imagine something and then observe the world, looking for signs, doubting, analyzing if it is working, you leave the creative state and return to the old one. It's like planting a seed and every day digging up the soil to see if it has already sprouted. Thus, nothing flourishes. Persistence is faith in motion. It is remaining in the assumed state, even when everything seems to contradict it. It is saying internally, I already am, even in the face of absence. This steadfastness is not blind stubbornness, but the recognition that visible reality is always the delayed reflection of the invisible. When you feel something deeply and sustain that feeling day after day, without letting your senses waver, you are engraving a new program into the unconscious, and sooner or later, the world will bend to it. The conscious mind is unstable. It changes moods, beliefs, expectations. The unconscious, however, is the fixed, silent power that creates from what is repeated with emotion. Therefore, the secret lies in nurturing the new idea with patience and discipline until it replaces the old pattern. All true transformation first happens through invisible persistence before revealing itself in visible form. When the world shows you the opposite of what you desire, that will be the moment to prove your faith. The test never comes at the beginning. It comes when you are about to win. That's when the old state tries to pull you back, making it seem like nothing has changed. But if you remain steadfast, feeling the inner reality as fact, you will see the impossible dissolve. What many call a miracle is merely the result of unwavering persistence in an inner state. The best time to consolidate this power is when falling asleep. At that moment, between the conscious and the unconscious, the mind is malleable and receptive. Relive the desired scene as if it were already real every night, with serenity and certainty. Do not seek forced intensity, seek naturalness. Quiet repetition is more powerful than momentary euphoria. Over time, the feeling will become so familiar that it will cease to feel like an exercise. At that moment, you will know that the unconscious has accepted the new reality. And then, without warning, it will begin to manifest. Circumstances will change, people will appear, doors will open, and everything will seem like a coincidence, but it won't be. It will merely be the silent power of persistence, making the invisible become flesh before your eyes. The man who seeks to control the how is the one who has not yet understood the nature of the power that dwells within him. The how belongs to the domain of the rational mind, the small self that believes it needs to push the universe for something to happen. But the true creator acts in silence, confident that the invisible intelligence that shapes the cosmos is always moving in his favor. The unconscious is that intelligence, limitless, precise, perfect. It does not need your help, only your faith. When you try to discover how your desire will be realized, you interrupt the natural flow of creation. The act of controlling is, in truth, a disguised form of doubt. And where there is doubt, power fragments. To abandon the how is to abandon fear. It is to surrender to the certainty that the cause has already been established, and therefore, the effect is inevitable. When you plant a seed in the earth, you do not sit at the edge of the field demanding to see the process. You trust the life hidden beneath the soil. So it is with desire. Once felt as real, it has already begun to germinate in the depths of the unconscious. Anxiety in observing results is the gesture of one who doubts the seed. But the one who knows simply rests, not in inertia, but in trust. The conscious mind wants to plan paths, create strategies, predict reactions. The unconscious, however, is the invisible architect that moves circumstances, synchronizes events, and connects people in ways your reason could never imagine. It chooses the most natural and perfect means to realize what has been decreed within you. Sometimes this requires silence. Other times a sudden inspiration makes you act at the right moment. But in both cases, it is the same power at work. To free yourself from the how is to live in active surrender. It is to continue imagining and feeling the desired outcome with gratitude, knowing that the path between the invisible and the visible does not belong to you. This surrender is not passivity. It is obedience to the law. Because when man tries to impose the how, he puts himself in the place of divine wisdom itself and ends up limiting what could be limitless. The one who trusts, on the contrary, lives in a state of calm, and calm is the signature of one who already knows they have won. The world transforms with perfection when man abandons the need to control. Everything that seemed impossible begins to align because the creative power moves without resistance. It is like the tide that, silently and constantly, shapes stone over time. Thus the unconscious works, without haste, without error, without failure. The how is the burden of those who doubt. Surrender is the freedom of those who have already understood. When you leave the how to God within you, the impossible becomes inevitable. Living in conformity with the new state is the point at which creation becomes complete. Many understand the law, imagine the desire fulfilled, feel for an instant the vibration of achievement, but soon return to acting, thinking, and speaking as before. That is when the power dissipates. The unconscious needs coherence. It creates according to the predominant state, not a fleeting desire. Therefore, living in conformity is becoming the desire incarnate, to think like it, react like it, exist like it. The external world does not change first. It is you who changes. The world merely reflects the inner transformation. The man who understands this no longer observes appearances as the final reality. He may be surrounded by limitations and still maintain the feeling of fullness. He may be in the midst of scarcity and continue to feel prosperous, because he no longer lives by circumstances, but by the assumed state. The new state is the new name you give to yourself. And when this name is accepted by the unconscious, all of creation responds. I am is the formula of existence. Everything that follows these words becomes flesh. To live the new state, inner discipline is required. Every contrary thought is an invitation to return to the old. Every conversation of doubt is an attempt to erase the new image. Therefore, keep silent about what you are creating. Speak little, observe more. Words have power, but silent feelings shape destiny with even greater force. When you catch yourself reverting to the old pattern, lamenting, comparing, fearing, remember this is merely a shadow of what you were, not what you are. Choose again. Feel the new. Sustain it. The true creator needs to prove nothing. He simply lives in the state of the already realized. Faith makes it natural, and naturalness is the sign that the unconscious has accepted the command. When the new state becomes so familiar that it no longer seems like imagination, it is ready to emerge as fact. People around you will begin to react differently. Opportunities will arise unexpectedly, and the world obediently will confirm what you have sustained in silence. This is living in conformity, not waiting to see, but seeing because you decided to feel. Not seeking signs, but being the sign. The power is not in affirming but in assuming. When you live from the new state, the universe recognizes the vibration of certainty and organizes everything to maintain the coherence of this new identity. That is why the world changes when you change, because it has no will of its own. It merely reflects what you have decided to be. And the day you live as if it already were, the entire world will have no choice but to prove that it is. Now you understand the mystery the ancients called creation. Everything you see is merely the shadow cast by what you carry within. The common man lives as a prisoner of appearances, reacting to the world he himself created, believing himself to be a victim of luck or fate. But the one who awakens to the law discovers that nothing happens by chance, that every event, every face, every detail of life is merely the exact reflection of the state he silently sustained. When you understand this, you stop fighting against effects and return to acting upon the cause. And the cause is always within. It is useless to beg for external changes, to plead for signs, or to try to convince the world. The power that moves mountains lies in the feeling you harbor now, at this instant. Everything that is assumed with faith and constancy in the invisible manifests, because the universe has no other choice but to obey the vibrational command of being. What we call a miracle is merely reality's perfect obedience to what has been decreed internally. Therefore, from today onwards, silence the noise of doubt. Do not worry about how or when or by whom. Abandon the despair of one who pleads and assume the serenity of one who already possesses. Live from the end. Speak as one who has already achieved. Walk as one who has already arrived. Feel as one who already is. With every breath, silently reaffirm, I am what I have decided to be. And the world, docile as clay in the potter's hands, will mold itself to the form of this conviction. From this moment on, no longer ask for signs. Command in silence. Feel the truth of your desire, as if it were an accomplished fact. And let the power of the unconscious do the rest. It does not fail, does not forget, does not get confused. It is the very expression of God within you, and everything you accept as true within you, the universe will confirm outside of you. Remember, everything already is, and it is within. The exterior is merely the echo of your belief. So choose now what you wish to hear back. Feel it, live it, make it real in your inner world, and observe the miracle happen effortlessly, because the miracle is nothing more than the natural manifestation of an inner state sustained with faith. This is the power, this is the law, and you are its creator.